when I get this, I'll be happy. No, bullshit. You can think and imagine visualization, and the whole point of neuroscience and visualization, you can feel it, so you can feel any way you want. You can feel like garbage, or you can feel good. And I think that comes from, a lot of my keynotes from John and some of the biggest mentors that talk a lot about the brain science and neuroplasticity and all that kind of stuff. And the thing that I'm most known for whenever I go talk, and what people want the most from me, is my gratitude poem. It's a simple gratitude poem. Now, the gratitude poem, on the first side is the challenge side, so things that are people usually bitching and complaining about and how to convert them from negative to positive. But it's just this simple poem that everybody asks me about, and I've read it every single day, with the exception of 3 days, since July 15th, 2015. So I've read it every single day. And now people say, oh, that's just Ricky. He's just positive. And I say, no, asshole, I work on it.
That's
every
right.
single day. It's a skill set. So, and I intend to most days to do it before I pick up my phone. But I read a gratitude poem before I start my day. Every single freaking day. Doesn't take long. Might take 2 minutes. And so then when I go out in the world, I have this. I have been programmed in a way, shape, or form that makes me feel good. A lot of challenges happen. Now I can deal with them, in my opinion, in a more productive way because I have been programmed in some way. And it's not this 25-minute meditation. At the beginning of the year, my business blows up because people want to run 20 miles a day. They want to meditate for 4 hours a day, and they want to eat lettuce. That's their new health plan because they think scale, right? And it's not scale. It's about consistency. So I say, no, write a 2-line gratitude poem, read it for 20 seconds every day. Like, start with that. So I think that's exactly right. People inverse it. I'll be happy when. Well, I can choose to be happy right now. And that sounds utopic and it sounds simple because it is. So, and then it's just funny, man. When you start to do that on a consistent basis, things start to change, just like Dyer. Change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. I don't think there's ever been a truer quote to live by, not just to post on social media.
No, it's very true. And I want to talk about gratitude for a second. It was something I was really wanted to, because you've transformed. So I've had a gratitude practice for years. I have a journal. I'm on my second one of 500 pages. Every day I write down my gratitude list, and I write it in a specific way that I'm grateful for the fact that. But over the course of stretching myself and doing this new public speaking and mental performance training and working with large groups in training, I had a lot of anxiety, because I'd been a commercial real estate developer for years. I've been on the hard asset side, now moving over to this emotional side. And you really transformed my gratitude list, because I wrote, and I remember writing it, thinking of you. I wrote, I'm grateful for my anxiety because it brings me closer to my God, because I'm realizing that I'm not in faith when I'm sitting over here in fear, and that I'm really not connected to my higher power, and I'm not really trusting my higher power because he's led me to this place. I'm doing it. The results of me doing it are positive. So I'm sitting here in fear, and I got that from when I heard you talk about gratitude for the crying baby. Gratitude, you've got this innate ability to say, look, you and I think you call it your gratitude chat, like, give me anything and you'll turn it into a thing to be grateful for. And I love to hear about where that came from, because, like I said, it really helped me transform, even when I think things aren't good for me, that they're showing me something that can get better.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's something. It's funny, whenever I'm at an event, and most people say, write 3 things you're grateful for. I say write 3 things down that piss you off.
Right on, man.
Because we can work on converting. I think it's just like anything else, like we're talking about. There's skill sets. Work on them. The better you work on them, the more you work on them, the better you get. So when we get in shape, you're going to get more in shape running uphill or downhill. When you've ever played any sports, anything at all, do they have you run hills or do they have you run downhill? So gratitude, I think, is very important, not just for the things that are easy to be grateful for. Anybody can be grateful when it's rainbows and ice cream outside. It's when the challenges come and how efficient and productive I am at converting that energy from negative to positive. Gratitude is one of the ways to be able to do that. So, and those were the things like Jack Canfield, Asaraf Meltzer, Tom Bilyeu, they all had specific ways on how I looked at it. But the Screaming Baby was the first time where I was like, when I'm on a red-eye flight, I get an aisle seat, I got my neck pillow, I can sleep like a baby. So the thing that just pissed me off, and I always say I apologize to people who have kids out there, but I was like, somebody shut that baby up or I'm going to freaking shut it up. And it just drove me nuts. And I literally remember I was going from LA to Boston, and I said, I'm grateful, period, for the Screaming Baby on the plane, period, because it means that I can hear. I call it simplistic beauty, man. I mean, we woke up today. We got a pulse. You know how many people had goals and dreams yesterday, didn't wake up today? But do we give thanks for that? No, we wake up and we bitch and we complain. Well, hold on, just time out for just a second. Do you feel that? So no matter what we're going through, there is something. And I think that is a great conversion of energy. I think conversion of energy is one of the greatest skills on the planet. The greatest conversion of energy I can think of, is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. The most unfathomable, inhumane thing to ever happen in human history. And Viktor Frankl was in a death camp. And I believe it was his mom, his dad, and his wife were burned alive. And when you talk about perspective, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning that got him out of that. And he credits that book and logotherapy and all that stuff getting him out of that place. And the number one hack or brain hack that I have to stop my bitching and complaining is this a Viktor Frankl problem? Is what I'm going through a Viktor Frankl problem? No, it's not. Now I can get back to being productive and profitable.
Yeah, and I think the lesson that came out of that for all of us is that the Nazi soldiers, the people in the concentration camps, could take his family and they could take parts of his freedom, but they could never take the way he reacted to life. And he chose in each moment how he wanted to react to life. And he had a bit of a playbook. He had his own set of values, and maybe we can transition into how important it is to know what we stand for and to know what our values are, because for me, values are like another muscle, right? I mean, I had for years, as I talk about when I was in the throes of my addiction, my dishonesty muscle was very strong. I grew up from a very young age, because of what was happening in my house, learning to be dishonest. I'd lie about what was happening to me. I'd lie about how I grew up. I'd say my dad took me to baseball games because I didn't want anyone to know he was beating me. I didn't want anyone to know he'd bash my head against a brick fireplace. So my dishonesty muscle got very strong. And I found in order to live the life I wanted to have, that I had to start working out my honesty muscle. So in the face of adversity, my strongest reaction would be my strongest value. And for a lot of times it was dishonesty. In the face of adversity, the lie was easier than the truth because it would protect me. Learning to be honest, I have to tell you, as simple as it may sound, was very hard for me because it exposed me that I'm not perfect, that I did make a mistake, that I have to own the fact that I did this yesterday, and I regret that, and I'd like to make that right, because the truth is I didn't miss the meeting. I scheduled another meeting that I thought was more important. I couldn't say that before, Right. So tell me, and I think that's what Viktor Frankl taught us, is he had a set of values that were how he chose to respond. Yeah. And because those values were so strong and important to him, he could rely on them in the face of adversity. And so maybe you can give us a little bit on the importance of values, Ricky.
Yeah, I think it's different for everybody. I mean, and I think that's a great rabbit hole to go down. What's important to you? For mine, my number one thing is gratitude. It's just, I can find, if people bring me a challenge, and not saying, just like the woman who confided in me, I don't know what being married is like. I've never been married. I don't know what having kids is like. I've heard it's very challenging and very rewarding. So I don't know what that's like. And that's the first thing that I share when people bring me problems or challenges. But what I do feel like I'm good at is changing perspective that makes me feel good, as simply as it can be. So that's a huge value to me. And gratitude is one of those ways to do that. Now I went down a rabbit hole of literally asking myself, okay, I'm going to be speaking or doing this. What is important to me? But you don't have to be a speaker or coach to do this practice. You can be anything, and it works for your life. So a good question to ask is, for me, and it might sound utopic, but it's something that can be very simple, is what's important to me, what are my values, and what do I want to contribute to the world? Those are simple things. And again, they don't have to be huge and magnanimous. It can be going outside and smiling at somebody. It can be texting a friend and being like, hey, I'm here for you. Small things add up to make this huge difference. So I think that's a really good question for people to ask, is what's important to me? What are my values? That's how I've constructed kind of mine.
Yeah, it's great, because I think when you live by values, you can have a successful day anytime, because you can apply your values to anything. One of my values is being helpful, right? So being of service and being helpful is one of my core values. And that's how I want to show up. And so in the course of a day, how can I be helpful? How can I be honest? How can I be hopeful? And I think hope is another important kind of cousin to gratitude, which is, and you can hold hope and hurt in the same. You can be, that kind of toxic positivity, I think, is out there a bit, and I'm a much more optimistic person than I'm a positive person, because it's hard for me to say this is good for me. What I can say is I believe there's a lesson in it. I believe that I'm going to learn something, and I believe that the future is going to be a lot better as a result of whatever it is I'm going through. And that perspective is important, no?
Absolutely. And I think and it's so applicable to everything, right? There's not a person out here that hasn't had challenges. And we can even make the argument, the greater the challenges, the greater the success. If you can stay with it and on a long enough time frame, you can win. And that's one of the things that, man, no matter what, and I will literally say this at an event, I'll say, whatever your challenge is, big or small, come and talk to me. I bet you together we can put our brains together to figure out not necessarily that you're grateful for it, but redefine the meaning of what it means. And the reason I'm confident in that, when I had a bunch of sales reps, we sat down, and my biggest go-to when somebody had a big challenge was like, did somebody die? Did somebody die? That's what I would say when somebody was going through. And his name was Ivory Heard. I still remember this. And he was like, yeah, my mom was murdered in a home invasion. And I was like, man, it hit me like, this is early when I'm coaching. It hit me in my gut. And we sat there for like 2 hours and like cried and redefined the meaning of the reason of why that happened in his mind. And the long story short was that he had a closer relationship with his brother, and they were into things now that they probably wouldn't have been if they weren't forced to reunite at such a young age.
Wow.